Yo, McCain Fourth Kids, here is your 4-digit by 1-digit division mixed. It's mixed with some word problems. This is part of your division packet for the flipped classroom. Please remember, I'm going to go really, really fast with this. So you're able to just move your scroll bar faster if you just are checking your work and don't want to watch step by step. Or if you need it slowed down, hit the pause button and you can get caught up and then hit play when you're ready. So I'm going to move pretty quickly though. So here we go. So we're going to start off with our does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers raw, just like normal. So think about what space you have. Over here I don't have a lot of space for my check marks, and this is 4-digit dividends. So I'm going to want to use this space right here. So if you're doing this with me, we're doing does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers raw. And then because we don't have grid, we're going to put our horizontal lines so that we're organizing our work. Now, the next paper after this is some blank grid paper. You're welcome to set up the problem on here and do it on the grid paper instead and just number your work. So like number 1 is right here type of thing. I'm going to do it on here for right now, but you're welcome to do either way. All right, so here we go. We're going to go through the steps. So D is determine. We're going to determine 4 times what gets me close to 1 without going over, and that is a 0. And so instead of solving the rest of this out, we can just join these together and ask the question about 12 instead. So determine 4 times what gets me close to 12 with going over. So I'm going to check off determine, and then right away draw my vertical line to separate that workspace. So I know 3 times 4, or 4 times what gets me close to 12, is 3. So now I'm multiplying. 4 times 3 is 12. And then we're going to subtract. 12 minus 12 is 0. Keep your place values in line. Check and make sure what's left over is less than the divisor. If it was more, then we could have shared it more. And so that means that this number would be wrong or our subtraction was wrong. So just be aware of that information. All right, and then we're going to bring down the leftovers and join it with the 0. So bring down the 2 and box it. This is sort of like what's on our tray left over to share now. All right, so bring down and box is done. And now we know we're going to repeat because there's spots left in the quotient. So we go back up to the beginning and we're going to determine. Again, I'm going to make my vertical line to separate my workspace. All right, so determine 4 times what gets me close to 2 now without going over. This up here is dead to us. We've already divided this up. This is what's left on the tray right now is 2 10s. All right, so now we're going to, after determining 4 times what gets me close to 2, I know that that is nothing. And then multiply 4 times 0 is 0. And subtract 2 minus 0 is 2. Check, is the king happy, is our little trick right now, and yes, the 2 is less than the 4. We're going to bring down the remaining amount that we need to divide up and box. So now what's on the tray is 27 left to divide up. And so we know we still have to repeat because there's spots left in the quotient. So we start back over again. So I'm going to determine 4 times what gets me close to 27 without going over. I know 4 times 9 is 36, 4 times 8 is 32, 4 times 7 is 28, so it has to be 4 times 6. So now we're going to multiply. 4 times 6 is 24, and we're going to subtract. 27 minus 24 is 3. We're going to check and make sure the king is happy, which he is, and we're going to bring down. There's nothing to bring down, but we can box the remainder. And we know this is going to be the actual remainder because there's no spots left in the quotient. So we have a remainder of 3. Okay. All right, now on to the next one. Here we go. We have a 7 here in the thousands place. So right away you can see that we'll probably be able to divide that up. Okay, so set up your McDonald's first. So we have does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers raw. Okay, and now We have our horizontal lines for our workspace. And again, if you're doing this on the grid, it makes it a lot easier. You don't need horizontal lines. All right, so here we go. We're going to start off with determine. So determine 5 times what gets me close to 7 without going over. And I can share this 7 with 5 people. So now we need to just figure that 5 times 1 is as close as we can get, because 5 times 2 equals 10. Now we'll multiply. 5 times 1 is 5. Subtract, and we get 2. 7 minus 5 is 2. Check, is the king happy? Yes. Bring down the 4 and box. This is our new amount on our tray, and this is dead to us. And then we're going to repeat because there's spots in the quotient. So we're going to determine again. I'm going to make my vertical line to separate my workspace. Because we're using this one, we're actually going to have 4 columns of check marks, so it's going to get pretty big. All right, so determine 5 times what gets me close to 24 now without going over. We know 5 times 5 is 25, so the next one down is 5 times 4. Now let's multiply. 5 times 4 is 20. Now we'll subtract. 24 minus 20 is 4. Check, the king is happy. Bring down the 3 and box. And we're going to repeat because there's spots left in the quotient. So vertical line, make a new workspace. Let's determine 5 times what gets me close to 43 without going over. I know 5 times 8 is 40, and 5 times 9 is 45, so it has to be 8. Let's multiply. 5 times 8 is 40. Subtract. 43 minus 40 is 3. Check. The king is happy. 3 is less than 5. Bring down the 3, or the 8, all the way next to the 3. Look how far that is. And box. And then we're going to repeat because there's one more spot left in the quotient. Look how long this problem is. Now you see why it's called long division. All right, separate my workspace. Here's number 4. Column number 4. 5 times what gets me close to 38 without going over? So 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 7 is 35. And 5 times 8 is 40. So I know it has to be 7. Let's multiply it out. 5 times 7 is 35. And then we're going to subtract and get 3. Check, the king is happy. There's nothing to bring down, but we can box it. And then bring this all the way up. We have a remainder of 3, and we're all done with that problem. All right, on to problem number 3. We have our does McDonald's sell cheese, burgers, raw, horizontal lines. And here we go. As soon as I put my first check mark, I can do that. That wasn't me tooting, by the way. That was my hand. There's my proof. See? Excuse me. All right, back to serious stuff. All right, determine 8 times what gets me close to 4 without going over. Nothing, so we're going to join it, basically unwrap it and join it with this, so we have 49 hundredths. All right, so determine again 8 times what gets me close to 49 without going over. I know 7 times 8 is 56, that's a little high. 6 times 8 is 48, that's pretty close. So we now multiply. 8 times 6 is 48. Subtract. 49 minus 48 is 1. Check, the king is happy. Bring down the 0 and box. So now we have 10 on the tray, and we're going to repeat. Back up to the determine. 8 times what gets me close to 10 without going over? 8 times 1, multiply it out. I'm also going to separate my workspace. All right, so 8 times 1 is 8. Now we're going to subtract. 10 minus 8 is 2. Check, the king is happy. And we're going to bring down the 4 and box. So this is what's left on our tray. Repeat, because there's a spot in the quotient, and we need to determine again. Determine 8 times what gets me close to this 24 that's on the tray without going over. And so I know 3 times skate is dentifloor 24, so that fits perfectly. Let's multiply. 8 times 3 is 24. Subtract. There's nothing left over to share. Check, the king is very happy. Nothing to bring down, but we will box it. And we're all done, and we have a remainder of 0. So we have a total, sharing with 8 kids, and that's how many each kid gets, with nothing left over for me to eat. All right, so now we're on to these word problems. We only have 3 of them. You can do them on the grid paper or on this paper if you have space. That's why I gave you the grid paper. All right, so underline important info. So at the airport, there are this many seats in the waiting area. So where the airport, this many seats. There are 8 separate same size waiting areas. So that same size means equal groups. How many seats in each waiting area? Sounds a lot like in each group. So let's go ahead and code this. Definitely a window 2. I have a total amount of seats. I want to know how many are in each waiting area, and I have 8 areas, which sounds like a group since it holds stuff. Okay, so the problem I'm looking at is 8,160 divided by 8 will tell me how many are in each group. So we have a total, a group, and in each group. And so we're solving these out with long division, showing work. So I'm going to set it up on the side or on grid paper. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do it on the grid paper just so you can see what that looks like. So I might just number this number 4, and then I'm going to make sure they're in the boxes, 8,160 divided by 8. Okay, so that's how you would do that. So here we go. Then you just set up your does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers raw, and away we go. All right, determine 8 times what gets me close to 8 without going over. I know that's 1, so I check off my determine. Now we're going to go ahead and multiply. 8 times 1 equals 1. Let me get some more lighting on here. And so multiply. 8 times 1 equals 8, I'm sorry. And then subtract. 8 minus 8 equals nothing. Check, the king is happy. 0 is less than 8. Bring down my leftover 1 and box. And then we're going to repeat because there's spots left in the quotient. All right, now back up to the top again. I'm using the grid to organize. So we're going to determine 8 times what gets me close to 1, nothing. Multiply, 8 times 0 equals 0. Subtract, 1 minus 0 is 1. Check, the king is happy. B, bring down the 6 and box. And we're going to repeat because there's space in the quotient. Let's determine 8 times what gets me close to 16 without going over. So we have 8 times 2 is 16, so that's spot on. Multiply, 8 times 2 equals 16. Subtract, 16 minus 16 is 0. Check, the king is happy. Bring down my leftover 0 and box. And we are going to repeat the process. So we have determining 8 times what gets me close to nothing. So 8 times 0 gets me close to 0 without going over. Multiply, 8 times 0 equals 0. And we have subtracting, 0 minus 0 equals 0. Check, the king is happy, nothing to bring down, so we box. And this is our remainder of 0. Okay. All right, so looking at the next word problem here, we have a wall by the school parking lot, has an area of this much. Okay, so the wall is this much. That's the total square feet. 7 teams, let's change that to standard form, will paint a mural. Each team will paint an area equal, so equal groups. How many square feet each team paint? That each team paint sounds like in each group. And so a team must be the groups. Okay, so we're going to set up this problem. This time I'll show you just on open space, but you know that you could do it on the grid paper. So we have 1,666 divided by, so you can do that drawing there, 7 teams, and it'll tell us how many each team will paint. So we set up our does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers raw, and horizontal lines for our organization. And then there we go. Determine 7 times what gets me close to 1 without going over. And that doesn't work for anything. So we're just going to unwrap that and join it together with the 6. So now we're looking at 16. So let's go ahead and officially determine. I'm going to do my vertical line. 7 times what gets me close to 16 without going over. So 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 3 is 21. So it has to be 2. multiply. 7 times 2 is 14. Subtract, and we get 2. Check, the king is happy. Bring down my leftovers and join them together. So now we have 26 on the tray, and we're going to repeat because there's spots in the quotient. All right, so now we're determining again, and I can make another workspace. Oh, excuse me. All right, so determine 7 times what gets me close to 26 now without going over. And so we have 7 times 3 is Denti Sun 21. 7 times 4 is 28. So that 4 goes over, so we have to use 3. Multiply. 7 times 3 is 21. Subtract. 26 minus 21 is 5. Check. Is the king happy? Yes, 5 is lower than 7. Bring down my leftover 6 and join it with the 5. So we unwrapped and joined them together. And now we're going to repeat because of that spot left in the quotient. All right, so determining again. 7 times what gets me close to 56? Ooh.
Oh, that's an Emma one. I know. 7 times 8 equals 56. Yay!
All right, so we figured out that 8 has to go there. Lucky you. And we're going to multiply.
Oh, 7 times 8 equals 56.
And then we're going to subtract. And we get 0. Check. The king is definitely happy. There's nothing to bring down, but we can box. And then we have a repeat or remainder. In this case, it's a remainder of 0. Okay, so, and then number 6, we have another word problem. Connor put a fence around the perimeter. Remember, you P around the perimeter. It's the distance around the yard. The perimeter is this many feet. Connor put fence posts every 6 feet. So how many fence posts did he use? Okay, so we have our total here. Every 6 feet is when he put a fence post, and so we want to find out how many fence posts he used, if that's how many are in each 6 feet is a fence post. So I don't really have a lot of room on this side, so this is where I have to use that grid paper. Okay, so we're going to set up the problem. So we have 858 feet, and we want to divide it up every 6 feet, and it'll tell us how many posts he used. Okay, so we'll go ahead and set up our does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers raw. Okay, and we don't need to do our horizontal lines if I'm doing it on grid paper. And then go ahead and determine 6 times what gets me close to 8 without going over, and that's a 1. And then let's multiply. 6 times 1 is 6. Subtract. 8 minus 6 is 2. Check. 2 is less than 6. The king is happy. Bring down the 5, and let's box it to make a new tray that we're going to divide up. And then we're going to repeat because of the spots in the quotient. Let's determine again. 6 times what now gets me close to 25 without going over. And so I know 6 times 6 is 36. That's too high. Maybe 4 times 6 is 24. Ooh, that's really close. And then we're going to multiply. 6 times 4 equals 24. And then we're going to subtract. 25 minus 24 is 1. Check. 1 is less than 6. The king's happy. Bring down the leftover 8. Okay, and repeat because there's space in the quotient. So we're going to determine again. 6 times what gets me close to 18. Oh, I'm sorry. Bring down in a box without going over. So I know 3 times 6 is 18. So let's multiply it. 6 times 3 equals 18. And then we're going to subtract and get 0. Check. The king is happy. There's nothing to bring down, but we can box. And so we have a remainder of 0. So just to answer that question, it says there's 143. So how many fence posts did he use? He used 143 fence posts. Okay. All right, so that's the sheet.